everyone. My name is Maria. I'm the COO of Tech in Asia. Today, I'm joined by one of my favorite people, Peter Bithos.
Hi, Maria. How are you today?
I'm great. Hi, Peter. Peter is the CEO of Seek Asia, and today he's going to be joining us to talk about this new 2020 Decoding Global Talent Report.
Totally psyched to be here. Thanks, Maria.
Maybe for our viewers at home, if you can start off with a quick intro of Seek Asia, who y'all are and what y'all do.
Sure. Yeah, many of you probably watching have never heard of Seek Asia, or Seek, as we're known globally. You probably know us better as JobStreet and JobsDB, which are the leading job sites in most countries across Southeast Asia. Seek, more broadly, if you can believe it, is a $10 billion tech company, one of the largest tech companies out of Australia. I have the privilege and fortunate opportunity to join Seek Asia, run the Asia portfolio, and help transform it over the coming years ahead.
Cool. Sounds like a huge role.
It's very fun.
And very exciting.
Yeah, my job is to help people get jobs, so it's very fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So today we're talking mostly about this Decoding Global Talent Report. Can you tell us a little bit more about this report and how Seek Asia is involved?
Yeah, so for many years now, we in Asia have partnered with the Boston Consulting Group and a consortium called the Network, which is job sites from around the world. We have run an annual or biannual talent survey, and we ask consumers, or employees rather, workers, about their sentiments, about trends in geography, where they want to work, how they feel about employment and their employment prospects. And we just released our report talking about trends in the workplace, and it's obviously very timely, impacted by all the events of 2020, and it's quite interesting. So that's what we're here to talk about today.
All right, Peter. So I understand this report is divided into 3 different sections. Before we jump into the details of each one, maybe if you can give us a high-level overview of the 3 different sections and how they work together.
Yeah, sure, Maria. You're exactly right. So the 3 sections are pretty straightforward, but cover the whole landscape. So the first one is where people want to work, and that is both globally, regionally, and even within Singapore. The second is how people want to work. Do they want to work remotely? Do they want to work in the office? And the trends related to that. And the final section is, what do people want to do? What industries do they want? What roles do they want?
So let's jump into the first section, where they want to work. Obviously, this has changed quite a bit. So what are some of the biggest findings about this report in terms of global mobility? And then specifically, let's tie it back to the Asian region.
Yeah, sure. Let me start out with the obvious statement, but then pick up a trend that we have found surprising, which is there is a significant drop in the percentage of people, both globally and in Singapore, who want to work abroad in another country. Many of you out there might go, well, that stands to reason. In a global pandemic, not many people want to be globally mobile. They want to stay safe and they want to stay close to home. However, when we dive into the data, this is part of a longer 7-year, 8-year trend across the world and in Singapore. And so we see the global trends. They talk about COVID being an accelerator of what the macro trends are. This is very much that case, right? Secondly, of those that do want to work abroad, Singapore and Asia is coming up on the list dramatically. And what we find is both regionally and globally, those countries and those cities that have managed COVID well have really come to the forefront, and those that have not have fallen back in the rankings. And so Singapore, for the first time, number 8 in the world is a preference in terms of a place to work. Places like New Zealand are in the top 10. If you look at cities overall, many Asian cities are now on the list for the top 20. Even Kuala Lumpur cracks the top 20. And so that's a macro trend, I think, of people recognizing the economy as well as how the region has handled COVID, maybe compared to, say, Europe or North America.
All right, so the second part of the report is how people want to work. So what are some of the findings and the top line insights that we can draw from the second part?
So the first question that I think everybody's asking themselves right now is, does my employee base want to work remote or do they want to come back to work? Probably affirming what everybody's gut now is. Most people, 75% of people want to come back to work in some way, shape, or form. Only 25%, 24% of people actually want to work remotely. And so the vast majority of people either want to work some days or all the days at work. Secondly, when you dig into it, 2/3, so 63% of the 75% want to actually have a mix. sometimes in the office and sometimes at home. Certainly that's what we're seeing on our own employee base, and we think that trend's here to stay.
A second interesting part of this report was the job attributes and what people are actually looking for a job, and kind of goes more into employee motivation. Anything that you can share about this one, and then maybe specific to the Asia region as well?
Yeah, so the trend we see coming out of this report is people have gone back to the most fundamentals in terms of what's important. My relationship with my boss, my relationship with my peers, my job security, my pay. Things like learning and professional development are they're on the list, but they're secondary to these really basic needs of connection to the people I work with and ability to keep my job safe. It says a lot to just the stresses we've all been under over this last year.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of revert back to stability and like the core fundamentals of must-have attributes of your job before the nice-to-haves.
That's right. And it's a good reminder, I think, for managers and leaders out there to continue to double down on the safety and well-being of your employee base. One thing I've noticed for sure is even managing the work-life balance of an employee, which ranks, I think, number 3 on the list, is so much more difficult in a Zoom world when you're not interacting with somebody every day and you don't have those little casual discussions or the coffees. You just have a scheduled Zoom. It puts an immense amount of onus on a leader to really ask the hard questions. How are you really doing?
And also modeling good behavior, right? If you're pinging at midnight, it's kind of hard to set that tone.
Yeah, that's probably the hardest thing for me.
Yeah, ditto, actually. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the third section of the report, which is what kind of jobs people want to do. Obviously, sector by sector, COVID-19 has had a massive impact. Some sectors saw tailwinds, some saw headwinds. So can you give us a quick readout about, globally, which sectors are doing well and which ones are on the decline?
So sectors that are in decline include travel and services, but also manufacturing as well. And the sectors that people want to go to include, first and foremost, your viewers would appreciate, tech and information services. But also you see things like marketing, HR, general management, like consulting, topping the list, possibly because it's easier to retrain than into tech, possibly because those are sectors that often service tech. For those of you know, we all need better marketing and better marketeers. So those sectors are growth areas as well.
Anything else that you're seeing from the report and the data reported around
that? So employers are really thinking about, how do I get this remote balance right? That's probably the number one thing weighing on tech companies right now. The hard thing, and this is a challenge that I think tech companies will uniquely face, is the tech industry over-indexes in people wanting to work remotely. So you have employers thinking about, well, wait, how do I get people back in the office? And how do I set the remote policy right? You have the broad-based economy going, I want to come back to the office and have a balance. But you have many employees in the tech, more than average, that's saying, I want to work remotely all the time. And that's going to be a very big challenge. We ourselves are grappling with this issue right now, and it's tough. It's a tough decision.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it really goes back to your product, the kind of culture you're trying to build, setting the vision from the top down.
That's right. Actually, that's an important thing you mentioned, Maria, that company values and the culture in tech industry matters a lot more than a normal industry. Because we're not normal, right? So, which stands to reason. Those of you out there, you know it. But it's shown in the data, and if you want to show it to your employee base, just pick up the report. It's actually quite interesting to see the breakout.
The other thing that I found quite interesting was there's this whole section on willingness to retrain. And the tech industry and the digital industries, especially because they've been able to retain so many jobs, more people are willing to retrain into tech-facing and digital roles than a lot of other roles. So tech should actually see a huge influx of non-traditional employees, if you will.
Yeah. So distinct from this survey, just because you brought it up, we ourselves have been looking at the 10-year trends in Singapore of job mobility from one industry to another. What is very fascinating is males and younger males are finding it incredibly easier to make the jump from industry to industry. Older workers and females are getting left behind in that jump. So that leadership in gender equality, if you run through the statistics over the next 5 years or 10 years, is at risk if we don't, as a tech industry and then in partnership with the government and education institutions, figure out how to bring and enable females through the ranks, as well as retrain older workers to fill the needs that we have.
So for the females and older workers, do you think this is a lack of willingness to try something new, or is it that they're not seeing these pathways, or is that they're actually out there trying to apply for slightly different, non-traditional jobs, and they're just not getting access to them?
It's a good question. We're asking ourselves that right now. Here's what we can see in our own data. We can see the applicants falling from those categories into the new industry relative to, say, younger males. And so then you have to ask yourself this question, are they not applying because they don't feel they have the skills? Are they not applying because there's implicit biases in the process that they're scared about? Or are they not applying because they're not interested? So we're trying to dig into that. I think it's a mix of all three, to be honest.
Wow. I hope we solve that one.
It is a good and important one to solve. Yeah.
Okay, so let's bring this conversation back to takeaways for the tech audience.
Okay.
So if I'm a tech employer in this region, what are some of the key takeaways that I should be pulling out of the report in terms of how I shape either my own workforce strategy or talent planning strategy or even salary strategy for that matter?
Yeah. So I would start with the most fundamental basics. One is the care and fundamentals to take care of your employees is first and foremost in people's minds. Second, within tech, that includes company values and your culture. And being clear on what you stand for is much more important in tech than it is in other industries. So within that context, some good news and some bad news. The good news is you have a lot of people in your organization and a lot of people globally who are now willing to work remotely for companies but living in their home and staying in their home country, right? So, for example, 55% of Singaporeans are willing to work for another company in another region, staying in Singapore and working as a remote worker. So there's a big talent pool out there of people who are willing to work remotely. The question for you and for all of us as tech individual leaders is, how do you want that policy to flight with all the other employees who want to be present in the office? And what does that mean for your office environment, for the tech tools that you need, and for the ways and practice that you work? Last but not least, we're all, especially in Southeast Asia, it is very hard to find talent. We're all going to have to invest in figuring out training new pools of talent to come through the ranks and to grow the talent pool even faster than it exists already in our markets. And we all have an accountability to do that.
Great. So that's from the employer angle. And then what about for the employee angle? If you're either somebody who's looking to retrain yourself, start to access a non-traditional job based on your particular resume, any advice for them?
Yeah. So first of all, if your viewers are already in tech, congratulations, you're in a growth industry and you should invest in yourself. There's lots of great platforms to build your skills these days remotely, and I would invest in that. Number two is if you fall in the category of you really like being remote, most of the people in your team, in your environment, may not feel the same way as you. Your company may want to bring people together. They may have very good reasons to bring people together. And so be a bit flexible because not everybody feels the same way as you. And number three is we all need everybody who's an employee out there. At some point, you do individual hiring for your team. I think we all have accountability for diversity and broadening the tech talent base in Asia, and that's down to the individual hiring manager.
Peter, thank you so much for sharing all these incredible insights today.
Maria, thank you for the opportunity. It's really great.
So we've actually really only begun scratching the surface of all the insights that these three different reports have. So folks who are watching at home, please do go over to the Seek Asia website and download the rest of the reports so that you can access these great insights for yourself and your team.